Claire never thought. A simple walk in the woods would lead her to something she could never unsee. The forest behind her grandmother's farmhouse had always been her place of peace. She knew its trails by heart, each bend in the path, each tree scarred by storms or lightning. That evening, though, as the sun dipped lower and painted the sky in strokes of gold and red, she noticed a faint trail she had never taken before. It was narrower than the others, partly hidden by brambles, as though nature itself wanted it kept secret. Something inside her stirred, half curiosity, half unease. She hesitated only for a moment before pushing the branches aside and stepping in. The new path was damp, the ground soft beneath her boots. The deeper she went, the quieter everything became. No birds sang, no leaves rustled in the wind. The silence pressed against her ears, until she could hear only her own breathing and the steady crunch of her steps. Minutes passed before she spotted it. Through the dense thicket ahead, something metallic caught the fading sunlight. At first, she thought it was a piece of farm equipment someone had abandoned years ago, but as she pushed through the last of the brush, her breath caught in her throat. It was a school bus. The yellow paint had long since dulled into a sickly, rust-streaked shell. Vines coiled around its body, weaving in and out of broken windows. The roof sagged under the weight of time, and one of the wheels had sunk so deep into the earth it looked like the forest was swallowing it whole. Why would a bus be left here in the middle of nowhere? Claire's pulse quickened as she moved closer. The number once painted on its side was faded beyond recognition, but she could still trace the ghost of it with her fingertips. The door stood slightly ajar, its hinges rusted, as though someone had pulled it open long ago and never closed it again. She paused, glancing over her shoulder at the trees. They stood tall and motionless, silent witnesses to whatever had happened here. The air was colder now, her breath fogging faintly as she exhaled. Gathering her courage, she placed her hands on the metal door. It groaned in protest, shrieking as it swung wider. A foul gust of stale air rushed out, thick with mildew, damp wood, and something sharper, metallic, almost like old blood. She gagged, covering her nose, but curiosity pulled her forward. Inside, rows of decayed seats stretched into the shadows. Some were torn open, yellow foam spilling like entrails. Others bore scratches, names carved deeply into the vinyl, initials etched with shaking hands. But among them were stranger marks, shapes and symbols she didn't recognize, jagged lines spiraling into each other. Her flashlight beam flickered across the windows near the back, and that was when she realized the glass wasn't simply dirty. It had been painted over, thick, black strokes sealing the rear of the bus in darkness. A cold shiver crawled down her spine. Claire's heart hammered in her chest as she stood, frozen in the middle of the bus aisle. The silence inside was unbearable, thick enough to make her ears ring. Her phone's flashlight quivered in her trembling hand, sweeping across the seats. That was when she noticed the floor. Scratches ran deep into the metal, long drag marks that started near the front and trailed toward the rear, stopping at the painted windows. They weren't random. They told a story, a struggle, a fight, something that had been pulled against its will. Her breath quickened as she moved deeper, each step echoing hollowly. The carvings on the seats grew stranger, less like initials and more like desperate scribbles, words layered over words, and symbols that twisted into shapes she couldn't understand. Some of the vinyl was torn not by decay but as if ripped open violently, leaving behind jagged flaps. Then her light landed on the back row. Claire froze. In the corner sat a neat cluster of children's shoes. Tiny sneakers, worn-down flats, little boots, all carefully lined up side by side. They looked untouched by time, far too clean for the rotting bus around them. For a moment, her mind refused to accept what she was seeing. The sight was too deliberate, too staged. She crouched down, hesitantly reaching for one small red sneaker. The rubber sole cracked softly under her touch, and a chill swept over her hand as if the fabric still remembered its owner. Her throat tightened and she yanked her hand back, heart pounding. Then it came. A soft, dull thud against the painted window behind her. Claire froze, her muscles locking up. Her flashlight beam flicked toward the back. The black paint on the windows wasn't solid. It had dried and cracked in thin, spiderweb-like patterns. Dust fell from the vibrations. Another thud. Harder this time. The glass rattled faintly in its frame. Her phone nearly slipped from her sweaty hand as a sound followed. A whisper. Faint. Broken, impossible to make out, but it crawled into her ears like icy breath. Claire's entire body went cold. The whisper came again, just a shade louder. and she swore she could hear the shape of words, though not enough to understand them. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs felt nailed to the floor. The painted glass pulsed again with another thud, this one sharp enough to make the frame shiver. The whisper rose into a chorus, overlapping, urgent, and horrifyingly childlike. That broke her. Claire bolted, her flashlight jerking wildly as she sprinted down the aisle. The bus seemed to stretch longer than before, the exit door a distant point of light. The whispers followed her, louder, climbing into shrieks, as if dozens of voices were clawing for release. She crashed through the door and stumbled into the woods, gulping the damp night air like it might save her. Behind her, the forest closed around the bus again, vines and shadows swallowing it whole. The whispers fell silent the instant she left.